Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. This is BRN AM for Wednesday, June 5th, 2024. And joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Jeffery Acheson is the Chief Executive Officer for Advanced Strategies Group. Jeff, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And Jeff, you know, I want to kind of set up this conversation for the audience because the U.S. retirement system has really evolved since the passage of ERISA. And there are different plans, different plan types. But I wanted to come to you because I think you've seen it really from its beginning stages to where it is now. So first, give us your perspective on the U.S. retirement system as it stands today, from where it started in with the passage of ERISA.
Right. Well, if you remember back with ERISA, and Fred, I appreciate your acknowledging my long tenured seniority in the business, which I measure in hours. It's like 135,000 hours, which is about 45 years of being a workaholic, if you will. But I think there's some revisionist history going on a little bit, because it used to be the perception is everybody had a pension plan where they were. And that wasn't really the reason for ERISA when we go back, 50 years ago. It was because some very large plans had some financial struggles and difficulties, and a few of them, the companies went out of business, the pension plans went broke, and people didn't get the promised benefit. But it wasn't like everybody had a pension plan through their employer from there. And if you went back then, there were no individual retirement accounts. And Ted Benna, who's acknowledged as the father of the 401k industry, found what was a loophole in the tax code under Internal Revenue Code Section 401 that allowed a participant to defer some of their salary for their own retirement. So it became back in that very late 70s, early 80s, the opportunity to create a supplemental savings plan, because the three-legged stool concept of retirement in the United States was Social Security, number one, which we'll come back to here in a second. Number two, an employer-funded pension plan. And three, your own savings and investments. So that third leg of the stool, when the loophole, if you will, was found in the tax code, created the opportunity to do that on a tax-advantaged basis. But I think there was, and back to revisionist history, a misconception that everybody had a pension plan, and then came the 401k, and all those companies got rid of pension plans. Some companies did, some companies do still have them, but the advent of health science and us getting so good at healthcare and having people live longer and longer and longer put exacerbated pressure on the defined benefit pension system, because they weren't calculated to actuarially take care of people who were living into their 80s, 90s, and beyond from there. So one, it's just an evolution of what was the 401k plan supposed to do, or what was it supposed to provide. So come on a fast forward basis, now it has become the mainstay of most people's retirement, because those that do have pensions, they're few and far behind, and they're worried about Social Security and the mismanagement, for lack of a better term, of the Social Security trust funds, and keeping them current with what the obligations happen to be, has now created a situation where there's a lot of bluster around 401k plans work or they don't work, and we should do something different. How do we go about it? And all that needs to be revisited and thought about.
And Jeff, it is an iterative process. No system was, as you said, I mean, it's grown into what it is today over many, many, many years and decades. And it's actually, I think, I'll give my personal perspective. I think it really, there are 115 some odd million people in the United States, 150 million workers right now covered by some type of retirement plan. Doesn't make the system perfect, because look, no system can be perfect, but the coverage gap is closing. The opportunity to save is growing.
Right, and let's kind of tear that down a little bit and break it apart, Jeff, because I think one of the things that I would give you a different perspective on is every working American is covered by a retirement plan, and it's called Social Security. And of that retirement plan, you're required to put in part of the contribution. Your employer is required to match that. And what is amazing to me is the Social Security Administration doesn't give the credit for the fact that it is America's retirement plan. And over the years, the amount that's had to go into it has gone up and up and up and up from there. And it needs to be shored up and fixed. And as I hear different proposals about changing the private retirement sector, I'm always a little bit amazed of, well, why are we going to do something new and different or propose new and different when we can't get around to fixing what is the mainstay of almost every working American's retirement in particular, in terms of preventing poverty amongst the elderly as we go forward. The Social Security trust funds, the Medicare trust funds are all rapidly depleting. And as we get into the mid 2030s, something's going to have to be done or benefits are going to have to be cut. But everybody working has a pension plan in the United States. So the Social Security was meant to be the mainstay, the foundation, the base, the pension, whatever you want to call it. And then the 401k plans, back to their inception, were meant to be savings plans where an individual, if they had the wherewithal to do so, would save so that they can supplement that base coming off of the pension being Social Security. So the issue becomes, in a lot of cases, what part is failing? And I think the failing part is income failures as opposed to savings rate failures, because the cost of living, inflation, all those things, people have not had the increases in their income they needed to afford them the opportunity to continue to save. So there's a perception that a 401k plan only benefits high income earners who have the ability to save. So you go back to, is that a failure of the system, or is that a failure basically of the structural aspect of compensation, in the United States along those lines? So I think as we come forward, trillions and trillions of dollars have been successfully saved in 401k plans. The problem is, one, the income disparity issue that comes into play, but number two, not every employer offered a 401k plan. So some people used IRAs, but statistics from the American Retirement Association show undeniably that people save better if you take it out of their paycheck. We all have a basically shortage of will and discipline when it comes to voluntarily saving money. And IRAs were around before, and utilized more than 401k early on, but they didn't quite have the success factor of 401ks for the very simple reason. The number one benefit of a 401k plan is your employer takes it out of your paycheck before you have an opportunity to spend it. So our issue becomes, we got to get incomes up so more people can afford to save, and we've got to get 401k plans or 403bs or simples. There's a lot of iteratives of what is a retirement plan, so that they can do it on a very methodical basis right out of their paycheck. But it all a matter of beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but you got to drill down to the fundamental issues of, why don't we fix Social Security so that it's financially stable well into the future, number one. And then number two, work on how do we get more people being able to earn more money so that they have money to save, and then provide the vehicle to do it through an employer-based or private system.
Yeah, really excellent analysis, Jeff. And I want to ask you one question before we go to the commercial break. There are lots of proposals about shoring up the Social Security Trust and the Medicare Trust Fund. One of which is, that there's a tax deduction that I guess it's a tax deferral of tax revenue to the federal government until you actually begin withdrawing money. Proponents of this policy want to take those dollars to shore up Social Security. What do you think of that proposal? Does it make sense? Will it shore up Social Security? And also, will it help the savings rates and the things that we're talking about this morning?
So I think you get into historical cause and effect of certain things. So when you talk about the 401k tax aspects of it and kind of the Rothification of retirement plan savings in the private sector. So the government uses a scoring system, and when you aptly pointed out, Jeff, that a 401k plan is not a tax-free plan. It is a tax-deferred plan. So if I pay tax on the seed, that would be a Roth. It will grow tax-deferred and come out tax-free. So I can choose to pay tax on the seed, but not pay tax on the harvest. On the other side of it, I can choose not to pay tax on the seed, in other words, a pre-tax deduction, gross tax deferred. But when I take it out, the harvest, I will be taxed out at the other side. But in both cases, I'm going to pay tax on it. And when we do the Rothification part of that from federal spending, is they look at things in that 10-year window, and to some degree, that ability of taking that deduction away now, letting it grow tax deferred and coming out tax free, you have to question, will that cause more problems in the future? Because now you've eliminated that tax revenue on all those dollars down the road 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, or when the money passes to heirs. Then your point being, if I take that tax savings that I didn't get, and because I did it after tax, and I want to use that to shore up the Social Security Administration or the Social Security Trust Fund. The question becomes, in execution, will that happen? Will that money go to what it was designed to do to help shore up what the Social Security benefit would be? Or do we need to look at other types of approaches, whether what is the full retirement age and what is certain benefits, are they means tested and different things along those lines? So Social Security is basically that tipping point, I think, has been reached where everything's got to be looked at as an option, and on both sides of the political debate and then both sides on public versus private, Democrats versus Republicans. And everybody's got to come to the table and find a workable solution that isn't driven by positioning or political ambitions, if you will.
Well, Jeff, as I said, I need to take, I don't want to take, but I need to take a very quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk more. What's that, Jeff?
Got to pay the bills, right?
Got to pay. Yeah, absolutely. Jeff, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the retirement plans and the U.S. retirement system. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the First Lifestyle and Wellness Network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device. Welcome back. We're talking this morning to Jeffery Acheson. He's the Chief Executive Officer for Advanced Strategy Group. Jeff, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Glad to be back.
Haven't lost a guest yet, which is amazing. Jeff, I want to ask you about technology. And back in 1978, there was the Apple computer, there was the Commodore PET, but technology really wasn't as heavily utilized. I mean, they were doing spreadsheets and things like that. Fast forward 40 plus years, technology is amazing. I mean, now we're talking about using artificial intelligence and chatbots. How has that technology been used and applied in the retirement system? Because it simply is amazing.
It is, and I think it's in very, very early innings of how technology is going to enhance the opportunity for people to try and plan for financial independence. Because I think the real key is the word retirement to me, Jeff, is outdated and just doesn't really reflect what most people think. Because today, financial independence is the goal. And what financial independence is, I can live the lifestyle I want without being dependent upon a paycheck or someone else. And it doesn't do me any good to retire, be financially independent, and find I have more days than I have dollars, and my financial independence wanes as I get older and I get into my later years. So part of when we come into technology and first part of it, what do people want as they kind of climb that stairway to financial heaven, if you will? And that stairway to financial heaven starts with financial literacy, then financial wellness, then financial independence, and then eventually financial legacy. Financial literacy is, you can get into, okay, that means the difference between stock and a bond, and not a lot of people care about that, frankly. Financial literacy really is about don't do these things that will put you in a hole or put you behind the proverbial 8 ball that you're just trying to get back to even from there. So when I look at literacy, it's really about avoiding mistakes. Financial wellness is, now that I've avoided mistakes, here are the fundamental things I should do in a positive manner that hopefully, if I've done properly over a long enough period of time, will create financial independence. And if I plan well and I'm disciplined for a long enough period of time, I'm probably going to create some kind of financial legacy. So let's come back to technology, which is the root of your question. What people really want today is not to be talked at, but to be talked to. And what that really boils down to is what I call the CSP formula of what do people want. They want convenience, they want simplicity, and they want personalization. And personalization is that you're talking to me about my situation, my anxieties, my fears, my lack of knowledge, my whatever it may happen to be. So when you apply it as you go along, you really think of it in a poverty standpoint. We all start our careers kind of in the same place, in that we have a poverty of knowledge and we have a poverty of money. We got very few dollars to work with. Back to the literacy, don't make mistakes. So if we can use technology to gear to the audience, even within one company, the 20-year-olds don't care about the 55-year-olds' problems, nor do the 55-year-olds care about the 20-year-olds' problems. So when we provide blanket education, it's ineffective from there. So we've got to get to the point of that CSP, convenience, simplification, personalization, that we're using education geared to what the audience may be. And all the way down, not to the class of the audience, the 20-year-olds. You may have some 20-year-olds that are completely different than other 20 years old going forward. Number two, technology can get into how much am I making, how much have I saved, what are my risk tolerances, all those kinds of things to give me a very customized and personalized mistake from there. Then as time goes on, you have certain people that are financially doing better than others. That doesn't mean they don't have poverty. That means they have a new poverty, and their poverty is of time, and their poverty is of trust going forward. And I think in the future, that relationship building of convenience and simplicity and personalization is using technology to support the advisor to be able to do that on a bigger, more scalable manner and to affect more people, because there is a trust factor inherent in, if my employer chose you to deliver this plan to us who work here, you must have passed certain screening, certain tests, certain credibility perspective that you're allowed to basically even talk to us from that particular point. And then the last poverty is when we go into retirement, you're kind of back to don't make mistakes again. Because if I have enough of financial independence, now I want to turn what I said earlier, more days than dollars. I don't want to turn it into where I want to make sure I'm always more dollars than I have, days. So back to educate me about what mistakes not to make, how to preserve the capital I have, how to take it prudently, and just make sure I don't run out of money. The old saying, the perfect income distribution model was when the check to the funeral home bounced, because that was the exact month you ran out of money. It timed it up perfectly if you weren't worried about legacy issues for children. So I think the biggest thing, Jeff, back to your question, what is technology is going to do? It's going to be able to help an advisor or an institution, depending on who's delivering it, consume lots of data to try and drill down very, very quickly to get to a personalized path, a personalized roadmap, a personalized strategy to help people better achieve the goals they've set for themselves as retirement/financial independence goes.
Jeff, last question. Let's talk about policymakers. That includes regulators and legislators, both in the House and the Senate. How do you build upon what we've already created? So instead of tearing it down from, just ripping out the foundations, what do we, we've had secure, I'm going to call it secure 1.0, but it really was secure. Now secure 2.0. On top of that, Tax Reform Act of 87. I mean, you know them probably better than I do. So we've had a lot of layers. What do we do next to make the retirement system better?
So to make it better, I think the first part is really, as it's all said and done, is one, we've just got to continue to aggressively educate and advocate and build on the successes of everything that's brought us here. Doesn't mean they're all perfect, doesn't mean they don't need changes, they don't need tweaking, they don't need modification. And when I said build upon the strengths, the Social Security system, and for me, for one, I think it's an awesome, great system. Because if we didn't have it, I think we're fooling ourselves that we didn't think the poverty levels amongst the elderly would be astronomically higher than they are right now. Back to what I said before, is it's hard to save money, and if you don't take it out of people's paycheck, and we mandated the employer match it dollar for dollar, up to the caps. So let's don't ignore it, forget about it, throw it away, and try to build out something new. Take that government intervention, if you will, to fix the existing system. Because I think the three-legged stool now has to be, what can an employer do? What can the government do? And what can the participant do or the employee do, working together to come out with better outcomes? Number two, on the 401k system, again, as I mentioned, it's been fabulously successful in helping people accumulate trillions and trillions of dollars. And I know from firsthand experience that people would not have been able to save as effectively as they did if that wouldn't have been coming out of their paycheck in little bits, year over year over year, getting some employer contributions. But even if they didn't get an employer contribution, the fact they saved money for themselves became critically important from there. So back to the combination of educating employers why creating financial security amongst their employee base is good for them. And the statistics show, if I'm not worried about my finances, I'll be a better employee. I'll do my job better. I'll be focused. I'll be clear. On the government side is educating them on why, yes, we need your involvement, and yes, we need your help, but we don't need the government to be the be-all, end-all, and fix all our problems. It has to be a collaboration, taking where success has been. And then back at the financial literacy, financial wellness, as educating participants. You got a role in this as well. You've got to participate. You've got to be disciplined. You've got to sacrifice for long periods of time. And this isn't my employer and the government should take care of me. That's only two legs of the stool, and it's not going to work. So they have a role to play. So back to advocating, educating, collaborating. We've got to take all of those things and work together. And I have a simple rule of threes, that if we have more things going on than three, it'll get complicated and bogged down. So if we come back to what we're talking about in the retirement plan space of what do we do with Social Security, what do we do with employer-sponsored plans, and then what do we do with tax policy? Because part of this drive, you always have to worry, were these changes suggested and or recommended not because we're trying to fix the retirement systems in the United States, but because we needed tax dollars for something else, or because we spent too much in another area. Now we're short and we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, type thing. So we also have to be honest about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and does it really help address and solve the problems at hand?
Yeah. Well, Jeff, it's been an interesting discussion. I think it's one that we're going to continue to have in our industry and outside our industry. I think a lot of people need to be aware of all these successes. I thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
That wraps up this episode of BRNAM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news in lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content? Then visit our website. We're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN AM. We'll have a very special guest and another important topic. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.